Welcome to the second episode of the Women in Leadership series. My name is Chiyoko Kakino. I am the Executive Vice President of Real Property Management here in Canada, and I will be hosting this panel of amazing ladies to talk about what leadership looks like today and what it's going to look like in the future. So thank you, Joanne, Carla, and Michelle for being part of this panel of successful, smart, determined, passionate, and an absolutely wonderful group of real property management ladies. I wanted to start off our conversation by getting each of you to introduce yourself, telling us a little bit about your journey in your career, and specifically when you got into the property management industry. And also, if you could shed some light on when you took a leadership role and when that pivotal point was in your career. So, Joanne, why don't we start with you? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Chiyoko, for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I'm Joanne Rashed. I am with Real Property Management Bravo in Calgary. My husband Arshad and I run the company together. It's been about 4 years now.
Great. Well, thank you so much and welcome. Carla, why don't we move over to you? So give us a little bit of background. I know you've been in property management for a significant period of time. And maybe talk a little bit about when that leadership role started for you.
Sure. I am residing here in Saskatoon. I have a property management company, Real Property Management Professionals, and we have been operating since 2013. Leadership positions for myself, kind of organically, I guess, started taking on leadership positions. I would say going back just over 20 some years, totally aging myself now. But I think, yeah, I mean, really, we're all leading all the time. We lead families, we lead companies, we lead teams, we lead associations, etc. But formally, I would say the last 20 years, Chiyoko. And thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Carla. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Michelle Fong with the Real Property Management Home Office team. I also reside in Calgary alongside Joanne here. I've been in property management since I was 18 years old. I took on a administration position in a brokerage, and from there I've worked with foreclosures with the big five banks. I've done work with the city of Calgary and the affordable housing, and I actually joined Real Property Management back in 2018 when I got to meet Carlo. Actually, that was the same year that you and I got to meet, and from that point on, I've always enjoyed a leadership position and enjoyed working alongside great women leaders because there's always an example for me to look up to, which is something I was always looking for in my career.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. Why don't we stay with you, Michelle? Why don't you tell us what skills an effective leader needs these days?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's changed a lot over the years, but in my opinion, it comes down to communication and active listening. I think it's incredibly difficult for great leaders to effectively manage a team, and especially a strong team, if they're not actively listening to what that team needs. Of course, I'm sure leaders have their own initiatives and goals that they want to meet, but without the people that are really working behind you, it's hard to hit that goal without all of those hands on deck, in my opinion.
Great. Joanne, what about you? What do you think, what skills do you think effective leaders need these days?
I think I agree with Michelle. Listening is definitely one of them. Listening to your team, listening to yourself, following your gut, you do need that, as well as compassion. I think when you are a compassionate person, I think that is very important in a leadership role.
I agree with you, Joanne. Carla, how about you?
I would say, in addition, I mean, active listening and compassion are two key things, I think, for strong leaders. I would say the ability to show confidence at times when they're not confident, kind of that calm in the middle of a storm is really important. And influence and the ability to really inspire hope and belief. So sometimes I think as leaders, we have to believe in the people that we lead, sometimes more than they believe in themselves, so that they can really move into their full potential. So those, I think, are the things that I've often really tried to work on myself, or I've kind of seen in leaders that I've really respected over the years.
Carla, as you mentioned, without dating yourself, you've been in a leadership role for a period of time. How do you think, how is leadership different today than it was in the past?
Yeah, I would say there's differences, and there's some similarities. The differences, I think, in the big one for me would be that leadership was often a title and something that you really like moved up the ladder to achieve. And it was very top down. So as the leader, you were very much telling everybody what to do. Whereas I had a really strong leader a number of years ago that showed me that maybe wasn't the best way to do things. And where I personally thrived, and I think I've seen my teams really thrive, is where it's very much straight line leadership. And we're doing this together. And I've often really looked at hiring people who are way stronger than I am in different areas to complement my strengths. Michelle being one of those. I mean, she has when I was working with her, when she was on the team, when I was fortunate enough to be working alongside of her, she has distinct strengths that I do not have. So I always feel like let's work on our strengths instead of people sometimes focusing on the weaknesses. So I would say just that straight line leadership rather than the top down is where probably the biggest change I've noticed over the last few years.
Great, thanks, Carla. What about you, Joanne? How have you seen leadership shift, and how is it different now than in the past?
That's a tough question for me because I'm still new in the leadership role. I really never took kind of that leadership role up until now. And even now, it's still almost like a work in progress for me.
Great. Well,
We're all a
thank
work
you.
in progress.
Yeah. Isn't that right, Carla? Michelle, what about you? You've been in the, property management industry for 10 years. You've had different leaders even within real property management. How would you explain leadership being today versus how it was different maybe in the past?
I've worked under a variety of different types of companies, from large corporations to like small independent. And what I've always noticed in the best managers and leaders I've had is care. A high level of care, attention to detail, not only in the business, but the people that are working within that business and leading people first.
Do you think that care is coming across more these days than it has been in the past? Is that something that you notice?
Absolutely. And to Carla's point, it's when you're working under somebody who is very ambitious on their own goals, and all the power to them, but they also just need to extend that level of care to the people that are underneath them as well. And I have been in environments where that wasn't the highest consideration, and it's felt by the team. You do feel like you're almost a pawn of the organization. And I think if you want long-term employees who really genuinely care about your customers, you have to care about them first.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, what has been one of your biggest challenges as a leader, and how have you overcome it?
Probably managing different personalities. So everyone's always going to have their own personality, and that makes us special, but it doesn't mean that we're automatically going to pick up on what everybody else's nuances are. But being a great leader and leading back to that active listening is understanding that even though two people might not seem the same, it doesn't mean that they don't have great attributes that they can contribute. And again, to Carla's point, there's strengths and weaknesses in everybody, and that's perfectly okay, and that's ideally what we want in an organization, because not everyone should be the same. And to lean back on that as well. How to overcome it is by listening and talking with your people, and again, that level of care of being fascinated and curious about how to grow your people even further.
Thanks, Michelle. Carla, what about you? What has been one of your biggest challenges as a leader, and how have you overcome it?
I think as a leader, you always want to be able to pull the best from people. And like I said before, having that belief in them before they even maybe see their full potential. But sometimes we get caught up in that we can save everybody, and we can't. So what I have learned over the years is that sometimes people are meant to enter your team, and sometimes there's a time for them to leave, and it's not always a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're letting somebody go. It means that maybe you're showing them how they could maybe be more fulfilled, happy, have more joy in their life, and really show their true passion and their purpose by going somewhere else. So I think coming to that determination that you don't always in different phases of your business or different phases of growth, that some people will stay and it might be time for some to leave. And that's still a hard one for me. Like I still struggle with it. I just like, I'll save everybody. Just come on in and, you know, and we could do that. But it is something I'm really trying to better understand, that who you start with might not always be who you end with. And that is not a bad thing because we grow at different paces.
Great. Thanks, Carla. Joanne, what about you? What has been one of your biggest challenges as a leader and how have you overcome it?
I think for me, my biggest challenge is kind of being honest with staff. Kind of what Carla had mentioned, right? You kind of think you can save everybody. And even when you just know they're not the right fit, it's still such a struggle to even have just an honest conversation with them and just to kind of correct them. For me, that was extremely hard, but I have worked on it and I've kind of told myself, right, like just being honest right up front is kind of the best way, because the more you kind of ignore it, it becomes a bigger issue. So for me, I still struggle with that, but I've improved and I'm still working on it as well.
Well, you're doing a really good job, Joanne.
Thank you.
Joanne, why don't you describe your leadership style?
I have to think about this one, but I've actually thought about this in the past, and I've been actually told I'm more of a coaching. I like to kind of coach. I'm a listener, and I just kind of point out more of the positive in somebody. So if they think, oh, I'm really bad at this, I'm like, but you're not, we can improve. And that's just the kind of leadership skill I think I have. I'm kind of the coaching leader.
Carla, what about you? What type of leader are you? And how would you describe your leadership style?
I think my leadership style would be labeled as collaborative. I really truly believe that the bigger your dream, the more important your team, and getting all of the ideas out on the table, trying to solve problems together, whether you're in marketing or sales and the problem is operational, they still would have input there, and I would see a lot of acceleration there. I will say I have very high expectations. I believe in a truly highly productive team, but my passion is really having people see success and see success in their own positions, but as a team as well. So I really love bringing the team together and trying to figure out the problems and issues that we're dealing with on a team level.
Michelle, how would you describe your leadership style?
I'm definitely people first, which I'm sure, to Joanne's point, I'm going to have a very big lesson coming up in my future of trying to be honest with my people, because I do genuinely care about anyone who works with me. I've had the pleasure of being collaborative with both Joanne and Carla in the past, and they're some of my more favorite times and sessions, but I'm sure there will be times in my future where I will need to be more honest with not only myself, but people around me. And Joanne, I will let you know when that time comes.
Can I just add to what Michelle said, because she said,
of course,
and someone else had said, it may have been, well, I think it was Michelle, about the caring, and I think that to be a strong leader, we have to care. We don't always have to like the people we lead. We don't have to be friends with them. We don't have to go out and socialize after work, but we truly do have to care about them, because it is such a responsibility that we're taking into our hands to grow them in whatever position they are. So, to Michelle, that as you have this coming up, I think caring is like one of the main things you have to be, but it will, the conversations they just never get easier. They're called tough conversations for a reason, I guess.
We talked a little bit about, how leadership has changed over the years. And, I feel, to make sure that you're caring about your team or the people that you're surrounding yourself with, I find myself, I really have to slow myself down because you get so into like just quickly executing. And so just taking that time to just really kind of think about, and really, as Michelle says, put those people first. So Michelle, just going back to you for a second, how do you think your leadership style has evolved over time?
When I first started off as a young supervisor, I was very much what Carla had described. I was just trying to climb the ladder. I was trying to get the title. Come to realize that when 20 people calling me at 8 o'clock at night, that's really when the people first mentality started to kick in. Like, this wasn't all about me. There are people who are looking for advice, who need guidance. And I'm just the type of person who will always want to help out. That's just my natural personality. But the more that I tried to help out, the more that I could see success in others. And I think that's when my management style really started to get more evolved and involved with the people that I was working with.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Carla, what about you?
How my management style has
Yeah,
evolved? Is
sorry,
that
yes.
what the question was?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I would say that in the beginning, I really felt I needed to solve everybody's problems that came to me. So as a result, I ended up with what I now call a bunch of monkeys on my back, that I got very weighted down, and people would come to me with the expectation that I would always have the answer. And so then they weren't really growing in their position. So I think as I've evolved, I've become more of a why, like, well, tell me why you're thinking that's a problem, or tell me what you think the solutions might be, and let's try to figure it out together, so that they grow from that, quite honestly, and they feel like they're now taking control of their position rather than coming to me to kind of control all of the situations.
Great,
And it's a big trust thing, right? You have to make sure you have the right people that you can trust.
Absolutely. Joanne, I know that you keep referring to that you're in a leadership position now, but I know you've been a leader for a number of years. So how has your leadership changed over time?
I think I've become more confident. I think for me, I wasn't as confident, and I just kind of let things go the way, other people wanted them to go. And even on the back of my mind, I was like, that's not the right approach, but I was always afraid to kind of speak up. So I think that is the biggest thing for me. And just realizing as well, kind of to piggyback on what Carla said there, for me is just trying to be 100% at absolutely kind of like everything, and just kind of wanting for people around me to be like, okay, she's kind of easygoing. But just for me right now, it's just kind of stepping out of my comfort zone. And when I just kind of want things not to be done my way, no, but just giving my opinion on things, that for me is much different now. Whereas before I'd be like, whatever you guys want to do, but it has changed for me now.
So it's interesting because, when we talk about comfort zone and you just talked about pushing it to what really pushes you outside your comfort zone, Joanne?
Oh. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Okay, we'll come back to you. How about that?
Yes. Okay.
Carla, what about you? What pushes you outside your comfort zone?
I would say, and I think I am getting better at this, but talking about myself. And that's where that vulnerability part of leadership comes in. And sometimes you do need to be vulnerable, and you have to let others see that maybe things aren't perfect. And that's something I have always struggled with. I've always thought that I needed to be this, like, nope, got it all together. Nothing's wrong. I can help you here. I can help you over here. And oh, sure, you need some help. I'll help you too. And realizing that it's okay to not have all the answers, and it's okay to have bad days, and your team will understand, but just talking that through them. And I think that's where, when people have asked me to talk just about myself, it's kind of like, oh no, could I just like talk about property management instead, because that's easier for me. So I would say that's one that's a tough one for me.
Thanks for sharing, Carla. Michelle, what pushes you outside your comfort zone?
With the utmost respect, I would say in the last 2.5, 3 years, it was Carla, which again, I say with the utmost respect. She saw something in me that I didn't know I had. And I was not a big speaker about 3 years ago. I was very much in a sales position. So one-to-one, I was very comfortable with. But when we started adapting more online virtual meetings and events and things like that, Carla was the one who really urged me to take on the opportunity and to take advantage of it and work on my skills on that. And I had to build my own confidence and my own boundaries on what that would look like. But I'm appreciative of the opportunities that she saw, because I wasn't seeing it the same way. And because of that, I'm now very, very comfortable speaking to a room of 100 people, which is only going to benefit my career as I go forwards.
Well, I'm
You're
appreciative.
amazing at it.
You know what? It's, of course, I've, only been with a real property management for a shorter period of time compared to you ladies. But working with Michelle, I just thought she's just like a natural on stage and a natural speak in front of people. So that's a great story that I just never even knew. So I appreciate you sharing that, Michelle. And I'm grateful for Carla too, because you are really good. Joanne, let's come back to you. Have you thought about what really pushes you outside your comfort zone?
I think for me, maybe just kind of like finding balance in life in general, and just kind of even, yeah, back to kind of like Michelle. She's a very bubbly, loud. I would never have thought that she was even, you know, that would even be something that wasn't even in her comfort zone, but just maybe looking at others and just trying to build that confidence. But again, just having, other roles in my life as a mom and whatnot, just to kind of learn you can't be 100% at everything.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Joanne. Michelle, let's go back to you. If you were to rewind the clock, I'm not going to say 20 years because that make you quite young, but if you were to rewind the clock 10 years ago and you were writing a letter to your younger self, what advice would you have loved to be given at that time?
Don't listen to others. And I mean that everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. You're going to get great advice from a handful of people. But what I have found is outside of that handful, it might not be some of the best advice for you. It might be coming from a different place. We all live different lives and different tracks and grow at different paces. And you need to figure out what out of that kind of murmur works best for you. And 20-year-old me, what probably would have listened to anybody and anything. And that's just probably being 20 and naive a little bit. But definitely, as I move forward, I want to make sure that I'm getting advice from the people that I genuinely admire, that I know that they are working towards what I'm working towards. And so this is something that's going to absolutely apply to me, because I've definitely made some mistakes on taking the wrong road from the wrong type of people.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Joanne, what about you? If you were to write a letter to your younger self, what would you have loved to be like? What type of advice would you have loved to be given at that time?
To be easy on myself. Definitely be easy on myself. It would be my biggest thing. And again, don't listen to everything. Follow your gut. Following your gut has kind of made me realize now that that's really important. And you could ask somebody for some advice, and it's not always going to be beneficial to me or to certain people. So just following your instinct.
Well,
And be kind to yourself.
That's great advice. It's very interesting is that, we all have this gut instinct on things, and it does take you a while to realize based on trial and error that your gut instinct is right and you need to take that path. But that took me a number of years to really realize that, my gut instinct is right. And you really need to follow that path. So that's a really good point. I would share the same feeling with you. Carla, if you were writing a letter to your younger self, what would you have loved to hear?
Yeah, I think I would tell myself to believe that anything is possible, to be authentically who I am, which kind of bounces a little off of Michelle's points there, I think. And there's a quote, and I think this was a quote by Napoleon Hill, but don't quote me on the quote. But I have it written down somewhere, and I kind of go to it every once in a while. And it's whatever the mind can conceive and believe, you can achieve, something like that. And I truly believe that today. But I don't think I believed that going back 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think that I would maybe tattoo that quote on my body and just kind of go from there.
Do you have tattoos, Carla?
I do have 2 tattoos. I think Michelle and Joanne both know the story behind them, but yeah, that would have been one that I probably should be tattooed earlier on in life. Yeah.
Carla, if we can just stay with you for a couple more minutes here, is that you've been in real estate and property management for decades, really, that industry. What qualities do you think women bring to leadership roles in property management or in real estate?
I think in property management specifically, I would say the natural ability to nurture. And not that men aren't nurturing, but I think women are just born instinctively with a nurturing quality. And in property management, we have these two sets of clients. We have our investors and we have our tenants, and we're this in-between person that we're trying to make sure we can keep peace between them all. So I think that nurturing and peacekeeping and understanding everyone is going to have an opinion, and maybe we can't make it right for both sides, but we'll do our best. I think those are qualities that come to mind for this. And any leadership role, you're going to need some determination and some grit in order to make it all happen, whether that's real estate or property management or anything else, I think.
Thanks, Carla. Joanne, what qualities do you think women bring to leadership roles in property management? Or of course, you also have experience in real estate.
I think compassion. Women are a little bit more compassionate than men, which is not true in all scenarios, but I do believe we bring compassion very naturally as well. And listening, I feel like we just listen to all sides of each story, and I think we do listen a little bit better in a sense.
Well, I know both Carla and you are mothers, and so you've got a lot of practice in nurturing and listening, because I'm sure you have to do that in your family life too as well. Michelle, what qualities do you think women bring to leadership roles in property management?
Well, I think it's funny that you bring up that both Carla and Joanne are also busy moms, because that's something that I think is a very valuable thing in a property manager's world. When I meet a new franchisee and I hear that they're a mom, I know that they've dealt with pickups and drop-offs and maybe a fire in the kitchen and a busy household and their full-time job. And that is kind of what a property manager is doing on a regular basis. So it's the little tips and tricks that have been passed down in that household management that I know women and mothers have continuously passed down into running that full business really of managing a household, and that it gets applied into property management, because you need that same type of gentle touch when you are working with investors and tenants and your own internal team and your maintenance and the plumbers and HVAC and electricians and everybody else in between. It has to come with compassion, and it has to come with a strong management sense over all of these different types of moving parts.
Michelle, I love that. I never really thought about it that way. And I watch my sister that has two young girls, and, just the ability to multitask and to stay on schedule and to handle the pressure and the stress is just unbelievable. And you're right, those skills are so transferable into the property management industry. So that's a really, really good point. So Michelle, just staying with you for a second, what skills or qualities do you think a leader needs to be successful as we move into the future?
To piggyback off Joanne, it's going to be compassion. Each team is going to move at its own pace and grow at its own pace, but it can't grow to the point that you want it to if you do not care about that core team that is eventually going to build that out for you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Carla, what about you? What skills or qualities does a leader need to be successful in the future?
I think a high level of emotional intelligence. Our clients and those that are in the workforce right now are coming from 5 generations now. So we've got 5 generations of people who all interpret things differently, want different things out of life at the phase that they're in, and being able to understand how we can manage and maneuver all of that and with a lot of flexibility and probably adaptability, I think are going to be key.
Thank you. Joanne, what do you think the skills or qualities a leader needs to be successful in the future?
I think being supportive, listening, and communication. And sometimes it's not really just like the vocal part of things. It's just when you do see, your staff in there, you just see them being a little bit off and really not all there as they used to be. Just kind of listening to that and just being really supportive to them, seeing what's going on. I think that's really, really important.
Great. And Joanne, if we look at people that you admire, who's a leader that you admire and why do you admire them?
It's really hard to kind of pinpoint one particular person, but in general, it's just on a day-to-day seeing, being in the office is, women kind of coming in and out, and like you guys said earlier, the pickups or drop-offs for kids is it's just really difficult to point just one leader, but it's just a general thing of just being a working mom and a busy mom, or just, yeah, it's just really hard for me to pinpoint a certain person.
Right. Great. Well, you're so nice. I'm sure you admire multiple people and you're
I admire
just
all
so,
of you guys on here.
yeah. You're just like the nicest person. Michelle, what about you? Who's a leader that you admire and why do you admire them?
I mean, it's funny that Joanne just said that because it's definitely the people on this call here, and I know this because we've had relationships for many many years. From Joanne, I've seen her take calls with me as she's doing those drop offs, and I hear her kids exiting her van, but we are in the middle of business right now, and she needs to get it done. And from Carla's standpoint, and I've had the pleasure of working alongside with Carla, seeing her run her own business, also tackle the RPM home office team and her busy life with her family. I mean, I'm about to probably enter into that type of womanhood moving forwards here, and it's nice to know that there is tons of possibilities when it comes to managing your family, managing your business, and still finding your own identity as yourself as a woman too.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Michelle. Carla, who's a leader that you admire and why do you admire them?
You know, I can't even pick one, Chiyoko. There's so many people that have inspired me over the years. When I go back to my real estate career, my uncle was he was and he still is probably the most influential person that I've had in my life as far as a leader. I think that's why when we talk about women in leadership, it's kind of a bit challenging because I've never actually had some of the challenges that some women have faced in leadership roles. Because with him, I learned his ways. So I feel like I learned some manly ways, but they've worked very well for me as a woman. So I think, transferable no matter what sex you might be. But I think a lot of leaders on the Century 21 side and some of those offices, some that Joanne Evans comes to mind, Chiyoko, that had a great influence on me as I was moving through my leadership roles when I was younger. Within the RPM organization, we have some fantastic women. And honestly, I'm inspired every day by those that I see stepping into leadership roles. I've been inspired by Michelle and Sandy Dale, also from the home office team, as I watched them over the years really take ownership and leadership within their roles in the organization. And then in my own company, watching Ashley really, over the last couple of years, step into a role of running the operations here. So it's, I think I'm inspired by those up and coming leaders just as much as I'm inspired by those that are in leadership roles in the past, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. One of the wonderful things about real property management is that there's so many different offices that the family members are all involved in running those offices. Carla, yourself, you have your daughter, as you say, Ashley, that's taken over that operations role. What advice would you give to young leaders that are kind of starting off? Like, what advice, if you're to give some advice to your daughter, what would you say to her?
Very similar to what I would say to my younger self is, really believe in yourself and your voice counts. You don't need to be somebody else. She doesn't need to be exactly like me. She needs to be authentically who she is and bring herself. And that's what people they'll follow that and lead in that way, because we have a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. So all the traits and qualities that we've talked about on this call that Michelle and Joanne have brought to the table are all important, but just believe in yourself. I think I do say it to her, and I would say it to anyone who's younger trying to move into a leadership role.
That's great. I just, to summarize some of the stuff that we've been talking about, Michelle, again, what advice, if you're sitting across for someone that was 18, 20 years old, what advice would you give them?
Just do it. Just go and do it. It doesn't matter if you do not feel like you have the qualifications, if you do not feel like you have the language or the talk, you're going to learn. And that's the thing about being young, is you are young. You have the time to learn. So go through those motions, mess up, make mistakes, apologize, and be kind, but don't let that stop you from going out there and just doing what you need to get done.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for summarizing that. Joanne, what about you? If you were sitting across from someone right now who was younger, wanted to get into a leadership position, what is some advice you'd give them?
Well, I have my daughter who is 13, and I tell her this every single morning. Walk with your back straight, chin up, be confident, be nice, do what feels right. And if you're scared, do it anyways. Be yourself, just be true, and be a nice person. And kind of what Michelle was saying, be apologetic. If you do wrong, apologize. It doesn't hurt to be, to be wrong and apologize for it. I feel like some kids these days, even if they're wrong, and not even just kids in general, if they're wrong, they just don't want to apologize for it. So I always tell my daughter, apologize, because it actually makes you a stronger person when you learn to take ownership of being wrong. Saying sorry, people actually will look at you in a different light, in my opinion. But I do tell my daughter that all the time. Follow your gut and go with it. Yeah.
That's nice. Well, you're such a wonderful mom and just a wonderful leader within our organization. So thank you to all of you. You are just like so passionate and you're compassionate and you're determined and you're just wonderful leaders. So thank you so much for your commitment, your hard work and your loyalty with the brand. I really appreciate this conversation that we've had. And I'm really honored to be, to have spent this time with you, just getting to know you a little bit better and kind of hearing your story. So thank you for sharing your advice and your experience and your insights with me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.